In 3, 2, 1, going live.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of HB Unplugged. I'm Mel Craig.
I'm Don Ramsey.
And this is going to be unique and different because Don's going to be a little caught off guard here. Don's asked me, well, where's our guest for today? And today our guest is Don Ramsey. You know, a lot of people are asking me, starting this podcast, I worked really hard trying to think, who did I want as my co-host on the podcast? And Don and I go back quite a few years, and I started thinking, who would be the best suited to be, a partner on a show that would really benefit the HB community.
Yeah.
And I just kept coming back to Don. It just kept coming back. And so, I picked Don because, I got a chance to spend some time with you about 2 years ago. We were at the Pier Plaza. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember this. And we're just shooting the shit. And it was really unique because you spent about an hour educating me on the history of HB.
Yeah.
I mean, from the old shooting club.
Oh, yeah.
The Golden Bear. I mean, you just highlighted so many things.
Yeah.
I posted a couple pictures of me in the 80s living here in Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
You saw those, yeah.
Yes.
And it's I lived on Adams and Pine, and I lived over there on Geneva Street, and it really was a different place back then.
Oh, yeah.
Way different.
Yeah. Huntington Beach was different back then.
We're not going to say it's better or worse. It was just different.
It was different.
Yeah.
And so, I grew up here in the 60s. My dad bought the house that I grew up in 1963. He was an aeronautical engineer for Douglas Aircraft and El Segundo.
Right.
And when Douglas procured the bid to build the Saturn V rocket fuel cell that sent the 1969 rocket to the moon, the fuel cell was built and designed by Douglas Aircraft, and my dad was an aeronautical engineer on that team that developed and designed
cool.
the fuel cell. So we moved to Huntington Beach in 63 and loved Huntington Beach. I lived in the South Bay before I moved here.
Where in the South Bay?
First I lived in Lawndale, then Torrance, then Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
So
I know them all well.
I lived all over the South Bay, but in 1962, I think, is when in 59, I was at POP, Pacific Ocean Park in, what's the name of that town?
San Diego?
No, Santa Monica.
Santa Monica. Oh, Santa Monica.
Anyway, so we're out on the ride that goes out on a pier at POP, and then you take that ride, and it's a sky ride to a little island off the pier, and then you come back. And when we went over the water, that's the first time I saw surfing, and that was in 1959. So I was 7 years old.
Wow.
And I remember seeing surfers in the water catching waves, and it kind of just didn't dawn on me that was a really cool sport. But as time went on, and I would say by 1962, when we moved to Manhattan Beach or lived in Manhattan Beach, my next door neighbors all surfed. And one of them had a surfer magazine and gave me the magazine. Wow, this is really cool. And I thought, wow, surfing is a great sport.
Oh, yeah. And
then,
South Bay was famous. I mean, Dewey Weber, Hal Jacobs,
I saw all
Bean.
those shops. I went to Manhattan Heights Elementary School, and now I find out all these different famous surfers went to the exact same elementary school. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of how I started in my surfing life, I guess. I'm not a pro surfer. Never have competed, but I love to surf. And then when my dad got the chance to move to Huntington Beach, I was like, wow, we're moving to even in my mind, Surf City.
That's Surfville, yeah.
Yeah, and so then when we got here, there was a guy in Sunset Beach selling surfboards, this guy named Tom Vance. And my brother bought a Tom Vance surfboard. I know the brand exactly. Tom never went off the chart with it, but he's the first shaper that I ever met and knew. He would come over our house. He was a friend of my brother's. My brother bought one of his boards, and I remember, wow,
Jim.
No, my older brother Mike.
Oh, okay, Mike, because Jim doesn't surf.
Yeah, Jim doesn't surf, but my older brother Mike, and then started going to Ray Bay, Seal Beach, River Jetty, and picked up on surfing, and I never looked back. I mean, I thought it was the greatest thing I ever found. And then growing up in Huntington Beach, I went to Marina High School, graduated in 1970. Then, as it turned out, I got my number was 99. I was going to get drafted.
Oh, yeah.
So I went in the Army. My dad said, if you don't go in, you're in trouble. And so, and I won't tell you why I would have been in trouble, but I went, and then I was a medic in the Army during the Vietnam War, worked in a hospital in Busan, Korea. We were rehabbing guys who were in napalm accidents and helicopter crashes. I did that for 14 months and
Well done.
came back overseas. And because of my job, they kept me in the Army. Usually when you come back, they would let you out. But I had 8 more months, and they put me in another hospital in Sierra Vista, Arizona. And I worked at Fort Huachuca for 8 months and finally left. And then my brother picked me up in a 66 11-window VW bus. And our plan was get back to Huntington Beach, build the VW bus. It was a transporter, so we took out the seats and we put in a bed and a little refrigerator and all that. We actually built it into a camper, and then by April of '74, because I got out in '73 or in February of '74, spent a couple months working on the bus, and then we hightailed it down to Mazatlan and then down to San Blas. And I lived in San Blas and Nayarit for about 5 months and served. And just had the best time. Grew my hair out so I could be accepted in Huntington Beach back then, and then came back to Huntington Beach.
You know, it's funny. You got out in '74. I went in '75.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay, so you're a little bit behind me. So were you in the Army?
Yeah, U.S. Army. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you go to Fort Ord for basic?
No, I was in Fort Lewis. Fort
you
Lewis,
went
Washington.
to Fort
And in my
Lewis.
overseas whoop-de-doo was Fort Wainwright, Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was actually in special services, not special forces, special services.
Okay.
So like my job responsibility was I was a weapons specialist in the infantry.
Okay.
11 Bravo 10 was
11 Bravo, sure.
my MOS. But it was interesting because I ended up getting sick, and I was restricted to barrack duties for a couple weeks because I had walking pneumonia.
Oh,
and so I had to recover. And during that time, special
Is this at Fort Lewis?
Fort Lewis,
Okay.
Fort Lewis, yeah, in '75, end of '75, going in '76, and special services came along and asked me if I would be interested in, going into the, as a corporal then.
Okay.
All right, I'll go in. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was a private.
You were
E4. I was an E3. E3.
Oh,
Sorry,
that's
I was E3.
okay,
Private.
that's a PFC.
Yeah, PFC. Yeah. And so I said, hell yeah, I'll go to that. And I had to be real close to my corporal status because that's what you had to be. And I ended up doing it. So, yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah.
You got out in '74, and I'm going in '75.
Yeah. So
You're an old fart.
Well, either way, I mean, now looking back, I realize it's the best thing that ever happened. One of them. I've had a lot of good things happen to me, but going in the Army when I did, serving like I did, and it became part of who made me who I am today.
It shaped you, yeah.
It
I think everybody who's
definitely
been in the service, that happens.
Yeah, it's probably one of the best things, if not the best thing that ever happened to me, was serving in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. Anyway, long story short, after I got out of the Army, moved down to Mexico, grew my hair out, came back to Huntington Beach, and the first place I landed to live, a friend of mine was renting a house on the runway at the Metal Arc
Oh, you
airport.
told me about this, yeah.
And I lived right on literally from here to the building across the street is where the planes landed in front of my house. On our front porch, we could sit there and watch the planes land and take off.
Unreal.
And that was a great time growing up and served. I think I getting $300 a month from the Army.
Yeah, we got our
enough
spiff
to help pay the rent, and I did a couple other things. Anyway, let me shut my phone off. And like I said, surfed and just had the best time. I remember surfing. Just like some of my favorite spots were just north of Golden West Street, before Patriot Point, in between Patriot Point and Golden West Street. There used to be a sandbar there, and it broke all the time. Was one of the best spots, and like a secret spot. People surf there, but not like they did downtown. And that was cool for me because I could drive right there from the airport, surf, and then go back home and kind of do my thing. I actually played music. I was in a band even back then.
It's funny you say that it broke every day. I remember
Yeah.
Robert August, we were at a car show together, and Robert told me, he said, one of the coolest things about Huntington Beach growing up was there was always surf.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I surfed the hell out of it, let's just say. I've had Robert Cyrack. I went to high school with him, RC surfboards, and got a bunch of boards from him. And Gordy was actually a good friend of mine.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I knew Gordy for a long time. It was a bummer when he passed. But anyway, long story short, I grew up surfing during that era. And then that's where I started the tire business, right in my backyard. I want to say this one thing. We had a donkey. My buddy owned, his family owned Ed's Dairy, and they were going to get rid of this donkey. I said, don't get rid of the donkey. We have a corral in the backyard at the airport house. And so I had a donkey for a couple years in my
What'd you
backyard.
do with the donkey?
After we moved, we had to give the donkey. They took the donkey. They moved, Ed's Dairy moved out to Hemet, and they took the donkey with them.
No.
But I got to keep Taco in my backyard for
Taco. That was his name?
Yeah, Taco was his name. Anyway, and then I started collecting car tires to resell for recapping. Back in those days, the state of California allowed car tires and light truck tires to be recapped.
Retread.
Yeah, retreaded. And that's where we started the tire company.
So they don't allow that anymore.
Oh no, they haven't allowed car
Retreads.
recap. Yeah, car retreads and light truck retreads in 35 years probably.
Oh, wow.
But long story short, built the business and still have the business today. Ecology Tire. We're over on Gothard Street. I've been in that corner lot.
I've been there
right
a couple times, yeah.
Yeah, for 47, 48 years.
Now funny how time goes by.
Yeah, and
Now going back to the surf spot at Golden West.
Yes.
You had mentioned that was a good spot for you. I try to tell everybody what it used to look like along the coastline. Were the oil fields still there at that time?
Oh yeah. So they used to call that spot 5 Wells because there was 5 of those oil pumps right there, and that was the spot, 5 Wells. But I always called it the north end of Golden West Street, which was just around the corner, and you had to walk through the cement pilings and stuff.
To get, yeah, I remember that.
And then that spot, like I said, it was just such a good spot, and I never told, just me and my friends would surf there, and I would see a few people there, but nothing like you would see downtown and stuff like that, south side of the pier, north side of the pier. And don't get me wrong, I've surfed there and had a great time there, but just the, I guess, privacy of surfing that spot, 5 Wells, was epic. It was just good, you know. And anyway, so then continued on. I've surfed all through the 80s and 90s. And about maybe a little over a year ago, I quit surfing. My shoulders started hurting me, and then that's when I found out I had really bad arthritis. January 11th of this year, had full shoulder replacement surgery. My plan is to get back out in the water. I don't know at my age will I be able to, but I'm going to certainly give it a shot as soon as all the muscles grow back and everything.
Time for a longboard.
Oh yeah, well I've always kind of been a longboard.
Me too.
I rode short boards back in the, like after I got out of the Army, all through the 70s. I rode short boards, but for whatever reason, so Gordy tells me, I want you to ride one of my boards. I go okay, and I had the best time on that Gordy. And then I think from then on, from like 81 up until right now, all my boards are longboards. I love longboarding.
And it's funny because in the 80s, late 70s, going into the early 80s, so many people had made the switch from the 50s, 60s, and 70s longboarding to shortboards.
That's right.
And the shortboards were just like growing.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like you. I really fell in love with the longboard.
Yeah.
I just thought it was the greatest thing ever.
It's fun.
And so even though I surfed a lot, I surfed for several surf shops and stuff like that. But I loved the shortboard, but I fell like head over heels with longboards.
Well,
it was my board of
yeah.
choice.
I'll tell you.
Easy to get out, easy to catch waves.
Yeah, it's just a lot. And fighting the current, that's one reason I got arthritis, always fighting the current, and got to be in the spot that I picked because I watch it before I go out in the water. Where's the sandbar at or whatever. But I got to surf in Waikiki, which I've never surfed. I've always surfed in Kauai mainly. I've surfed all over Kauai and know a lot of the surfers there. But my wife wanted to go to Waikiki after we did the reveal of the ID Buzz a year ago last June on International VW Bus Day when we put 300 or 240 buses down there. We went to Waikiki, and I got to surf, some tourist, really well-packed tourist spots. But if you can catch waves, I mean, you can surf. And like catching a right there and just trimming, and you're looking right at Diamond Head as you're going down the line, it's like epic. You're actually at the spot where Duke Hanamoko surfed and the whole thing started was like right there. So that was
part of
really
history.
epic for me. Yeah, I really loved it. I mean, I would do that again. I told my wife, when are we going back? And she says, when's your shoulder ready? And I go, not for a while. But, you know, just growing up in Huntington Beach and being here for as long as I have, I feel blessed. You know, I'm involved in a lot of board of directors that put
You know,
on events in our
actually,
town.
let me interrupt you there, Don, because I do want to say that to everybody. How involved you are in the community is over the top amazing.
Yeah.
Karen and I talk about where the heck do you find the time to fit so much in?
So I have a book that's got everything I'm doing. In fact, I just went over a lot of it with a guy who just called me because during the U.S. Open, I am busy. I mean, I get VIP passes and all that, and I'll do some U.S. Open, but I'm involved in probably 6 of the 8 or 9 days of the U.S. Open. I am busy helping with events here in town that show off Surf City, USA.
Yeah.
And believe me,
All the events that are part of that event.
I get to do it. It's not that I got to. I get to do it.
You're stoked.
And it stokes me out because I love our town. I love to showcase our town. I hope that we get picked to be the 2028 Olympic competition venue. I don't know why that won't happen, but it's still, you know, it hasn't been determined,
Right.
and we're keeping our fingers crossed. Hopefully that it does happen here, because that needs to be on the resume of the city of Huntington Beach. We hosted Olympic competition here in Huntington Beach, and it would be skateboarding and surfing, which would be
Epic.
yeah, it would be. I mean, this is the spot.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you know, like my whole life, since I've been here, 4th of July is my favorite event. And as a kid, riding down Lake Street, because the whole parade would line up on Lake Street. That's where they used to line it up. And Lake Street was, you know, there wasn't any houses. There was some oil pumps and stuff like that on Lake Street, and it was all eucalyptus trees, like packed, like a giant tree tunnel.
Oh, you said that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and so all the the bands and the horses and the floats and everybody would line up on Lake Street and get ready for the parade. And I always knew that, so I would ride my little Stingray, and I'd ride my Stingray.
How old were you?
I was probably 11 or 12. And because I was at my dad's house, and he knew, you going, and I go, yeah. He would always pick this spot that was right at Palm and Lake, but I would get there earlier in the morning just so I could ride
the bike, yeah,
and just smell the horse crap, and just, I mean, it was unreal.
The whole
for me.
dynamics of it.
Just everything. And
Yeah.
you would just ride
All
your
together.
bike and see all the bands and the floats and stuff like that. And I had a chance about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Someone said, Don, you need to be on the 4th of July executive board. And I go, well, it's about time. But so I am so proud that I get to help out with the 4th of July. Like I said, it's my favorite event. And then they picked our band to be the opening band for the block parade. I think we've done it 5 years in a row now. And from what I understand, we're going to do it again next year. It's just, these are things I get to do in a community that I love and I've lived in practically my whole life. I've lived here like 60-some years,
There's quite a few things I want to ask you again, but,
Yeah.
let's talk about your family life. I mean, when I go on social media from the grandkids to your wife, first
Yeah.
off, your beautiful wife, Michelle. I mean,
Yeah.
when did you guys meet? How long you been married?
Okay, we'll go through that. So she was maid of honor at my brother Jim's wedding. Jim's wife, Margie, and my wife have known each other since they were like preschool.
Wow, so they go
grew
way
up
back.
down the street from each other. And
First
we're
friends.
Yeah. They grew up elementary school and high school and all that. And when Margie got married to my brother, my wife was maid of honor. So I met her, and we kind of like, hey, how are things going and stuff like this, because she actually came to my house when I lived at the airport for a party.
Oh, wow.
I did. Her and Margie came with my brother Jim, and I met her then, but I didn't really think nothing. I think she was 17 years old then. And then when I met her at my brother's wedding, she was about 21 or so. And we really didn't date. I just kind of knew her, and then kind of would see her at different parties and stuff. And then it came, I was available, and I asked her out. And she goes, okay, yeah. And actually, I was living in the home I live in now. I've lived in my house for almost 44 years. And we started dating, and one thing led to another, and I asked her to marry me. She said, "Heck yes," and we got married, and it was kind of cool. Margie was in.
So was she the maid of honor?
I can't remember, but I think so. But it was real special. We've been together a long time, but I'll be honest with you, we were divorced and separated for 6 years.
Yeah, I know. Remember that.
I was, I'm not convicted, but I'm a convicted drug addict.
Yeah.
But I'm sober 18 years.
So everyone's proud of you.
Best decision I've ever made was to stop drinking and using drugs. Very lucky that I lived through it.
Dude, I
learned
mean,
a
you got to,
lot.
all of us. I mean, when we grew up surfing,
Yeah,
it's
just what it was.
yeah.
In fact, I tell the kids and the families that are come to our our Huntington Beach Board Rider clubs, I talk about the life in the '60s and how things were here. Drug addiction or drugs were related to surfing.
it was all part of it.
It was was just part of it, and unfortunately, it was. But things have changed dramatically, and it's not part of surfing anymore. And thank God that it isn't. But anyway, so I got sober and kind of started redating my wife, and then we just got remarried. And my son was best man, and my daughter was maid of honor in Kauai. We went to a church that we used to go to in Kauai, and we got married there. And so yeah, I mean,
Now,
pretty
how
real.
many kids?
we have 2 kids. My daughter's 40. We just celebrated her birthday. She turned 40 back in January. My son's birthday, I think it's
Better
this
remember
week, or it's like next. I think
probably
it's
still wants
next
gifts.
Tuesday. Yeah. His birthday is next Tuesday, I think.
And grandkids.
I have my 2 favorite, probably my best friends are my 2 grandkids. Jack, who's turned 10. And my oldest is 13. He'll turn 13 November 1st, and that's Kevy. And I love them. They're just the best kids.
I was talking to Kevy
lucky.
at the block party.
Yeah.
And I said, how cool is it that you get to say your grandfather, your granddad, your grandpa is a rock star?
Yeah.
And he started laughing. It was cool.
Yeah, well, it was cool to watch him and my daughter dancing.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was really good. But yeah, I'm blessed to have a good family. Everybody's healthy. And life has been good to us, good, bad, or indifferent. We've made it all happen.
And I think everybody has that story. You got to get through.
I mean, we've all got dark spaces that happen, and then you just
skeletons
get through
in
them
the closet.
and they make you better people.
Yeah,
is
they
what
do.
They do.
Let's talk about Jim a little bit. It's kind of interesting because
Yeah.
Jim is a hot rodder.
Well, no, Jim's a low rider.
A low rider. Yeah. Let's make
Jim's
that
a
clear.
low
Yeah.
rider.
He'll actually. He would have.
Jim
clarified.
is my brother who's in the band with me.
Yeah,
and we've
Jim
done a
Ramsey,
lot
the
our
Ramsey
whole
brothers.
lives. Yes.
So, getting to know Jim a little bit and stuff, and actually working on a couple of his cars for him, and
Yeah.
actually going and seeing his man cave the very first time.
He's got a
He's
got a
cave.
car museum
Oh,
in
yeah.
his garage.
Yeah.
I've taken every mare that I've known through the last 10 or 12 years.
You got to go see my brother's cave.
Yeah, or even longer. Come and check this out. People have no idea that he's got this insane car museum in his 3-car garage.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to get to know Jim, and you can get invited to go check out his garage, it's like the ultimate man cave. Like
Yeah,
it is.
it
badass.
really is.
So he's into his lowriders. He's into that
Yeah,
that hot rod classic car, vintage car.
He founded a club called the HB Gabachos.
The cabachos, yeah.
Yeah. And
I was like, what's a
it's
white guy
all
doing
low
a
riders.
cabachos?
It's
Yeah.
all low riders.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
you're into buses.
Yeah, so I'm in a surfing type thing. And so what are the odds that 2 brothers in Huntington Beach, one would be the founder and organizer of a lowrider club, and the other one is a founder and lowrider of a VW bus club.
And now remember, Jim is a white guy with a lowrider car club.
He's always been a lowrider.
Yeah.
He just has.
And his cars are classic. They're
Yeah.
very nice, yeah.
And then we've been playing music together for
So when did that start? Because I don't know. I don't know that story.
probably in the early '80s. We started a band, and then
You both grew up with musicians, like
I started playing probably when I was about 13 or 14. He didn't start playing until he was like 18, which is no big deal. He was
Right.
still a teenager. And then he got into a band with his friend, and then they asked me to come in, and we were with that band for a few years. And then we started another band together, and we were in that band for, 4 or 5 years. And then, it just kind of progressed. He's become a really good bass player and a great singer. He's the best.
His
singer.
voice is awesome.
He's so good.
Yeah, he is.
And so we get to, kind of. He does his thing, I do mine, but we do it on stage together, and it's worked out real well. So our band, the Ramsey Brothers Band, has been together, I think this band for about 15 years, but we were in, I can't even remember the name of our other band, but we were in this couple other bands that were great bands, but I didn't have the contacts like I do now. So, I mean, people in the city know who I am, or different board of directors that I'm on. They go, well, we'll just get the Ramsey Brothers. They're right here. And so that's all worked out really well. I've been able to play at the U.S. Open, play at the Air Show. We've done the Surfing Walk of Fame a couple times. I mean, we get to play at
the Block Party.
Yeah, the Block Party, the Surf City Marathon. We've done that a few times. That's insane. But yeah, it's been
music in
great
Huntington
time.
Beach is really big. I want to get into the Golden Bear in a second too.
Okay.
But it's funny because in 1980, I had my choice. I was living on Adams and Pine.
Yeah, I know right where it is.
Yeah, and Terry Booth lived right. I don't even know Terry. He lived right catty corner from
the name.
Yeah, Terry, 6-foot guy. Anyway, really cool. Make a long story short, I was going to have a party in the garage. It was one of those separated garages, backyard in the middle. And so we were going to have a party, and I had my choice between Van Halen and Oblivion. Do you remember Oblivion in Huntington Beach?
I don't.
Okay, so they were like incredible. I don't know whatever happened to them. And this was when Van Halen and Oblivion were coming up the ranks, and they were actually getting good, but they were still backyard bands, like just doing the parties.
Oh, I remember Sublime doing the exact same way.
Yeah. And so I picked Oblivion, and they came to my house, and they set up in the garage, and it got out of control, of course. Helicopters, HBPD showed up, broke it off. Like it was like
what the heck's going on down there?
We really lost it. But it's interesting because I just thought I'd bring that up. That was 1980 on Adams and Pine.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Golden Bear brings. So after I got out of the Army, I really started going to the Golden Bear. I didn't go there like every weekend, but when bands played there that I liked, like I saw B.B. King there. Tom Scott and the L.A. Express with Joni Mitchell.
Van Halen was there.
Yeah,
I went.
Yeah, I didn't go to that, but I saw so many great bands and never really thought much about it. And I'll tell you a good story. The player from 10 Years After is playing their band. I wish I could remember his name right now. I can't. But he's, he played at Woodstock, and he's just a great piece, an insane guitar player. Anyway, he's playing at the Golden Bear, and so my buddy Jack and me would go, well, we got to go there and get tickets. And when we get to the Golden Bear, it is packed. The line going down the street towards where the Dairy Queen is practically all the way to.
And that was a Jack in a Box back then.
Yeah, that was a Jack in a Box, and that was also Lake Street.
Lake Street. Yeah, that went through there.
Lake went all the way through, but the line was, I'm telling you, went all the way there. Alvin Lee. That's a guitar player. So me and Jack go, what are we going to wait in line? There's more people in line than there's going to be tickets for. We could cut in line. No, he didn't want to do that. So we're just kind of standing there, and where the Golden Bear is, right before that, and on Main where HSS
is now, yeah.
That was a parking lot. And so we're standing in the parking lot, and there's people in the parking lot, and everybody talking. And back then there was a alleyway going behind the Golden Bear and all that, and it came out onto Main Street, and there's a motorhome parked there. Me and my buddy are looking, and all of a sudden, the door opens, and it's Alvin Lee. And Alvin Lee, the guitar player, me and my buddy, that's Alvin Lee, And so we walk over.
That's cool. You even knew who it was.
Yeah.
When you saw him.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. We knew who Alvin Lee. That's why we were going. And he's smoking a joint. And he walks up to me and my friend, and he goes, "Hey." And then my buddy Jack takes it and went, "Oh my God!" and he hands it to me, and I give him the joint. And just then, the side door to the Golden Bear, which is kind of right by the sidewalk, opens up, and the guy goes, "Let's go!" And Alvin Lee takes off and goes, "Bye-bye." And so me and my buddy just looking at ourselves, and we didn't get to go in, But I can honestly say I
Sold out.
smoked a joint with
Alvin
Lee
Lee, yeah.
10 years after, which is, if you ever watch the movie Woodstock or know anything about 10 years after, they were a great band back in the 60s and 70s.
You know, to be able to even go back and I mean, I'm honored beyond belief to say that I was able to see the Golden Bear. You know, go in it, and
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just
Elvin Bishop.
talk
oh my
about
God.
talk about historic stuff.
Downtown was different. Like they say, it was a surf ghetto. It was all, I mean, there was a few other shops. There was this Chinese restaurant, kind of like where maybe on the other side, okay, where 31 Flavors is now, that used to be a bus terminal, a Greyhound bus depot.
I'm trying to remember that.
Yeah, there was a restaurant called Terry's in there, and Terry's also was the bus depot. But next to that, there was this Chinese restaurant, and I used to go there because no one ever go there. Me and my buddy would walk in there, and God, they had the best food and never got the recognition. I remember when after it was all over, going, damn, those guys, if they'd had a way to promote themselves better or something, because the food was outrageous. I just, like for me, that's what I think about. Or the grocery store that's on Walnut and Main Street, for 25 cents, you could get this baked potato that was delicious. And for another 25 cents, you could buy a half a potato or a biscuit. This really good biscuit.
So potato and a biscuit.
Potato and a biscuit. And then for 10 cents, you could get a Coke this big. So for like 60 cents.
We're dating ourselves.
So for 60 cents, you would walk out of it.
You had a
And
full
we
meal.
would always go in there. This is as when I was a kid, you know. That was the spot that we would eat at right there. And I don't know, just kind of miss those spots. The Villa Sweden that's on 6th Street and Main. One day we're there during the USA Surf Championships, me and a friend of mine, and in walks Corky Carroll, David Nueva, Brad McCall, and Mike Purpose. All four of them, great surfers, right? They're in like the finals of the U.S. Open, the USA Surf Championships. And we're sitting right next to them. They walk in, and me and my buddy go, oh, my God, look who's sitting right next to us. And, in fact, I told David this story a couple of times because I know him now, you know, and he goes, I don't remember that day. And I go, dude, I will never forget it because it was a big deal for me as a kid growing up, and those are four of the top surfers in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But, yeah, I miss the old days. I like it now. I mean, the way that they've done it to me is good. They've turned, you know, I used to go to the Grinder restaurant that was at the 9-hole golf course, the Driftwood Golf Course. And that was that. If I miss anything from downtown that they took away, would be that area. It was just classic the way it was, and it was a spot where you would see guys that you had never met outside surfing, or just different people that would go there, and they would be the same people that went there for breakfast on Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
And I would take my daughter and a best friend there, and she would spend the night, and I would go to her. I'd say to her, you want to go to the Grinder? And she'd go, yeah, let's go to the Grinder, you know. And we always went to the Grinder and then talked to guys that were golfing. And it was just this spot that I wish we still had. That's the only thing I really miss probably is the Grinder restaurant, 9-hole, that Driftwood. But, yeah.
So, I mean, for me in the 1980s, going up and down Main Street, just walking down from Geneva Street, or taking my bike. I had a Schwinn with the big handlebars.
Yeah, sure.
And I just carried my.
You still do.
yeah. Still got the bike with the belly hanger. You know, and just enjoying the lifestyle was way different. You know, it was like growing up a surfer. I think a lot of people don't realize what it was like in the 70s being a surfer and the lifestyles that we led, you know, from the parties and everything else that we did.
Yeah.
But now let's go back, you know, when it comes to one of the interesting things that I never got to see or involved in, because probably I just didn't know it existed, the shooting range.
Oh, yeah.
The shooting club.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I got, after talking to you, I went online and I read about, wow, what an amazing.
Yeah. The gun club was there, and I obviously left before I ever got here, years before I was even born. But people used to talk about it, and as a kid, we used to ride to the end of Bolsa Chica, and that took you down a trail, and you got to go right to where the gun club was. But also Smoky Stables was still there. That was this green barn that was on the top where the palm trees are. You still see them today. If you drive down Warner and look to the left, you see those palm trees out in the Bolsa Chica Reserve. That's where the Smoky Stables was. And he was kind of, he was very protective of that area. So if you were a kid on a bike around there, he'd tell you, "Get the hell out of here!" This isn't for bikes; it's for horses. And that's what I remember most about it. I know that the gun club probably has more history because of the value that it brought to the community. But as a kid growing up, and the reality of it, for me, it was Smoky Stables, and then when I went to Marina, I met a girl who had a horse. She lived over here, right down the street from where I live now. She lives off of Graham. She doesn't live there now, but her name was Shelley Alders, and she had a horse. And she would ride it out there, and sometimes walk it over to Smoky Stables. And as a teenager, I go, "Well, can I go with you?" And she would say, "Yeah." And we'd walk the horse over to Smoky Stables, and she would get it. They would brush it down and feed it, and clean it, and all that, and reshoe it if it needed it, and all that. And I don't know, that was probably a really cool time. Little did I know that I would end up living right down the street, because I live at the end of Graham. At the Bolsa Chica Reserve, I can see Catalina from my house.
Wow, yeah.
I'm very blessed where I live, and I've lived there for this past 4th of July was my 33rd year, so I'm in my 44th year of living in the same home, and I'm
there's a lot to be said for that.
overwhelmed.
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
Last but not least, let's talk, going back to the surfing culture, jacks.
Jacks.
It's like, because, that is a very familiar, it's like the history there has got to be huge. And I don't know a lot about jacks. I mean, although I was here in the 80s, late 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, living here. But, I knew jacks, and I knew the spot. But there's so much that I probably don't know about jacks. And a lot of people don't know, setting the record straight. I mean, they're a landmark. I mean,
it is a landmark. But if you ask me about jacks back in the 60s and 70s, I can tell you that the people that lived above jacks and the stuff that went on up there was like insane. But I went to a couple of parties up there. But as a kid going to jacks and just checking it out, it was like, wow, this place is pretty cool. I didn't realize that they could make a shop with all that stuff in it, because it like you mentioned Bing's and Jacobs and Hobie down in the South Bay.
Yeah, Dewey
and they
Weber,
weren't
all of
like
them.
that. Yeah. They weren't like, it was strictly just surfboards and a couple wetsuits and something. But Jack's had all this other stuff, and even as a kid growing up, I couldn't really afford all that. My dad was very strict on giving me money. He said I needed to earn it, which I did.
That's good. My dad was the same way. Yeah,
but
we learned from the right guys.
And just to give, so there used to be this place called Hungry Joe's on 5th and PCH. And Hungry Joe's, I actually played there when I was 18. And it was you had to be 21, but I lied to the guy and told him, and me and my buddy were in open mic, my buddy Chet Bolding. And we played the blues there and kind of hung out. And then years later, I think after I got back out of the Army, it caught on fire and burnt down. And that's where HSS started.
Oh, yeah.
So Huntington Surf and Sports started there. It was actually Bob Bolin of Greek Surfboards that started it, but he sold it to Aaron Pye, and Aaron Pye is the guy who turned it into Huntington Surf and Sport as we know it today. But wow. It actually started right there. It was it was like Jack's, but down from Jack's, and so it was probably easier access because of all the traffic and stuff downtown. You could pull right up on the back. Aaron actually worked at the cash register and all that, so it was pretty cool. And then of course he moved down to where he is now and all the other locations. And so him and Jack's both are two landmarks for the surfing culture that really bring a lot of attention to our town, which in my opinion is a good thing, because the economy thrives from that, and then we get to showcase our town. Like I'll tell you this, even when I was in the Army and people ask me where I'm from California. Where do you live in California? Huntington Beach. They go, Huntington Beach? You live in Huntington Beach?
Oh, yeah.
And this is back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
But, I know our town, if you tell anybody anywhere in our country where you're from, they go, wow, you're from Huntington Beach. I mean, that is something. And it's because our town is iconic. We have more surfables beaches
Yeah.
than anywhere in
It
the
is.
world. We
It's
have
incredible.
the most consistent surf in the
Yeah.
world. There's
Yeah.
more days surfable here than any other days or any other places.
Yeah.
Which
One
is
last
lucky.
question. You
Yeah.
know, it's growing up surfers. You know, I'm down in San Diego. I have my heroes down there, and people I've been in hot coated for Everly and Lightning Bolt.
Oh.
You know, so I had it was really cool being able to hang with the guys from Lightning Bolt when they'd come over from the islands. Jerry Lopez, Roy Russell,
Wow.
Mark Richards. They'd walk through the door, and of course, I'm starstruck. You know,
Yeah.
like wow, like and back
I was
then,
like that.
yeah. And back then, it's like okay, it was cool working for Everly and doing all that.
Yeah.
And Everly sponsored me, and so did Lightning Bolt. So and back then, sponsorship wasn't like money. It was
Yeah.
like you're lucky to get a good
Yeah.
pair of board shorts and a shirt out of the deal.
Yeah.
Tom, come on, pay my entry fees. I got to go surf in Huntington this weekend. But my question to you is, who were your influencers here in Huntington Beach on the surf side? I mean, look at here. This has got to be a hard question for you, Don, because what I tell people is so many people don't know the history of the surfer in Huntington Beach. How many great surfers
Yeah.
came out of Huntington Beach?
Oh God,
It's huge.
There was a guy named Mike Corcoran when I was a senior at Marina High School. He was state champion longboarder, and he was the most humble guy. You wouldn't know it till he tells me one day because he's find out that I'm surfing and all this stuff, and I just remember thinking, wow, you're state champ, and then there's a girl named what is Lisa's last name? I saw her growing up here, and she's a great surfer. She's part of the Golden Girls with Jericho.
Oh yeah, I know
Poplar.
those. Yeah.
And I mean, people who like a good friend of mine named Gary Morris, who passed away. He had a stroke at age 38. Was a great shaper, awesome surfer. The guy was just insane. Never competed, but could have been world champ. I'm telling you, he was that good. And so it was those guys. And then, like, when I met Gordy, and Gordy got my shit, you need to be riding my board, and I started riding Gordy's surfboards because he was on me. But actually, I loved surfing Gordy's surfboards and knowing him and the history that he brought to our town.
He put you on a
and
longboard.
Well, yeah. Gordy was the first surf shop ever in the United States. It was Gordy's surfboards.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Oh yeah, Gordy was the man. He started here in like 19. Well, I'm talking about in Huntington Beach. And real quick, I know we got to go. I want to tell you one quick.
We're good. We're good, man.
Gordy says to me one day, he's at my house watching the Super Bowl. This is like in the 90s, and he says to me, "Hey Ramsey, I'm going to go out in the backyard and have a cigarette. You want to come with me? I'll tell you some stories." And I go, "Yeah, heck yeah." And so he goes, "You want me to tell you?" Because when he talked to you, his eyes were closed like this. "You want me to tell you how the first surf shop in Huntington Beach, California, burnt down?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, so his surfboard shop used to be right underneath, like where Sandy's is. There was a few little places right there, and
right at the base of the pier.
yeah, and his was the first one right underneath the pier. Anyway, he's working there, and John Severson, the founder of Surfer Magazine, is coming to Huntington Beach, and they're going to go have a couple beers across the street at the this bar. I'll remember the name, the Capri, which actually ended up, Mike that owns Zach's.
Yeah. Zach.
He owned the Capri bar. Anyway.
Well, Zach's is down by the plaza.
Yeah, but he didn't own it when this happened to Gordy. Anyway, so John Severson shows up to the surf shop, and Gordy's working inside the little surf shop on a board. He's glassing it or something. And he tells John, "Here, wait outside. Let me finish this board." So John Severson goes outside. Gordy gets done, and they both walk across the street, walk across PCH, and go in the Capri bar, which is like right where Sessions is now. And they're in the Capri bar drinking beers, and a kid runs in the bar and says, "Hey, Gordy, the surf shop's on fire." And Gordy looks across the street, and he sees flames coming up from the pier. Like,
Was it a hot goat bucket?
no, and so he's thinking, "Oh my God!" And so for years, surfing was considered a dark sport in the city of Huntington Beach. Believe me, in the beginning, it just was, because they thought it brought in drug addicts and bums.
We were all low
which it did.
Yeah.
But it was considered a dark sport, and Gordy always thought that the city paid an arsonist to burn the surf shop down. So 10 years later or a little longer, Gordy's in Maui with John Severson at his house. And John Severson says to him, hey, Gordy, you know the day the surf shop burnt down? And Gordy goes, yeah. And he goes, well, while you told me to wait outside, I smoked a cigarette and flicked it on the ground when we walked out. And I think that
But
yeah, got some of the glass or resin on fire and moved there and started the whole thing on fire. And Gordy goes, oh my God. He goes, that's how it happened. And then he looks at me while he's telling me the story. He's got a cigarette and he goes, Ramsey, what are the odds the founder of Surfer Magazine would burn down the first surf shop in Surf City, USA?
unreal, Don.
Yeah.
I mean, we could sit here for a couple hours, and I'm sure you could just go on and on. I mean, you shared so many things with me, over the last few years.
Well, we'll continue on as I bring in other people that you want to interview and that want to come. So far,
I really want to get Duke in. I saw him at the 4th of July.
Duke Ipa.
Yeah. So because at the surf shop, and believe me, Everly's surf shop wasn't on the beach. It was in Escondido.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to drive in to Escondido to work at the shop.
Tom Everly?
Tom Everly, yeah. Yeah. So, and I remember when Ben came through the door, I was like, that was like, whoa. And he had this thing. And he was bringing into Tom because he wanted to talk about the Stinger.
The Stinger, that's right.
So I want to bring, I was telling this.
That.
Yeah,
I know
get Duke in.
He's a great guy.
He's really,
I know he loves to talk his story because it needs to be known. He's his history in the surfing community.
Legendary.
Legendary, for sure. Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's a great choice.
Yeah, it'll be a fun time to have him on the show.
Yeah, very good.
Well, I'm Mel Craig.
I'm Don Ramsey.
And thanks for joining us for another episode of HB Unplugged.